The soft afternoon light streamed through the gallery window, creating a warm and vibrant atmosphere. I was at an art exhibition, an event I had always dreamed of photographing. I was surrounded by colorful canvases and intriguing sculptures, each piece telling a different story. It was the kind of place that made me feel alive, and as a photographer, it was my duty to capture the essence of every moment. As I walked among the artworks, I stopped in front of a painting that caught my attention. Its vibrant colors and bold strokes seemed to reflect a passion I couldn't ignore. That's when I saw him. Jake. He was just a few steps away from me, enveloped in an aura of charm and mystery. His tousled hair and intense gaze immediately drew me in. It felt as if time had slowed down and everything around us had disappeared. He approached me, a contagious smile lighting up his face. "Are you admiring this painting too?" he asked, his voice soft and inviting. "Yes," I replied, trying not to seem too eager. "It's fascinating. I feel like I can sense the artist's emotion through it. It's incredible, isn't it?" Jake said, looking at the painting, but soon turning to me. "Art has this ability to connect us, even if we don't know each other personally." I agreed, a bit dazed by his presence. "I'm Clara, by the way." I extended my hand, which he shook firmly. "Jake. Nice to meet you, Clara." He smiled again, and my heart skipped a beat. "You're a photographer, right? I can see it in your eyes. You capture moments with a special touch." "Yes, I try," I replied, feeling shy. "Photography is my passion. Capturing the essence of things, feelings, it's what I love to do." "I would love to see your work," Jake said, a sparkle in his eyes. "I believe art, in any form, is an expression of who we are." The conversation flowed naturally, as if we had known each other for a long time. We talked about art, our lives, and dreams, and the connection between us grew with every word. He had a bohemian vibe, a lightness that enchanted me. "You should have a website or a gallery for your photos. I believe the world needs to see them," Jake suggested, and I could barely contain my smile. "Maybe one day," I replied, a bit shy. "I'm still trying to find my style." "You already have a style, Clara. That's what makes you special. And who knows? Maybe we can do something together. You could capture my next project, perhaps." His proposal caught me off guard, but the idea of working together was thrilling. "That would be amazing," I exclaimed, my enthusiasm overflowing. The thought of being by his side, creating art, felt like a dream. Time flew as we continued talking. We laughed, shared stories, and before we knew it, night had fallen. The gallery was nearly empty, but we didn't want to part ways. "Would you mind having a coffee with me? I don't want this night to end," Jake asked, his eyes shining with anticipation. "Of course, I would love to," I replied without hesitation. We walked together to a nearby cafe, and the atmosphere was magical. The streetlights softly glowed, reflecting our smiles. It was a perfect setting, as if we were in a romantic movie. We sat at an outdoor table, and Jake ordered 2 cappuccinos. "You know, I feel like we've known each other in other lives," he said, looking into my eyes. "It's rare to find someone you connect with so quickly." "I feel that too," I admitted, a little startled by the intensity of his words. "It's like we're in tune." He smiled, and a wave of happiness washed over me. We talked about our musical tastes, our favorite bands, and Jake revealed that he was a visual artist. He spoke about his inspirations, his struggles and achievements, and I listened attentively, mesmerized by his passion. Art is my way of expressing what I feel. Sometimes I get lost in a world of colors and shapes. It's my refuge. "That's beautiful," I replied, admiring his sincerity. "I believe art is an extension of who we are, and you seem to have such a vibrant soul." The conversation flowed until, suddenly, Jake leaned over the table. Clara, I promise I will always be honest with you. I don't want you to have doubts about me. Honesty is the foundation of any relationship. I believe that too. I responded, feeling my heart race. Trust is essential. He smiled and took my hand, enveloping it in his. The touch was warm and comforting, and I knew I was falling for him. But at the same time, a small voice inside me whispered that I should be careful. After all, love wasn't just about promises, it was also about vulnerability. The night unfolded in a mix of laughter and passionate glances, and when Jake got up to go to the bathroom, I couldn't help but think about how everything felt perfect. The aroma of coffee and the relaxed atmosphere made me feel that this moment was just the beginning of something grand. When he returned, he brought a small package in his hands. "I have something for you," Jake said, with a mischievous glint in his eyes. "A gift." "A gift? For me?" I asked, surprised. "Yes, I'd like you to accept it," he replied, extending the package. My heart raced as I unwrapped what appeared to be a necklace. It was delicate, with a heart-shaped pendant. "It's beautiful," I exclaimed, admiring the piece. "But why are you giving me this?" "Because I want you to know that, just like this necklace, our relationship is precious. It symbolizes the protection and sincerity I promised you. I want you to always remember that," Jake explained, looking into my eyes with an intensity that left me speechless. "I love it, Jake. Thank you so much," I said, touched. I put the necklace around my neck and felt a wave of happiness as I realized how genuine he seemed. "Now you're officially protected," he joked, winking at me. "And I'll be here to ensure that promises never run dry between us." That night became a milestone in my life. Under the stars, with the necklace shining around my neck, I felt I had finally found someone special. The future looked promising, and the idea of living a love like ours had me on cloud 9. Jake and I continued to meet, exploring the city, sharing laughter and dreams. The connection between us grew stronger every day, and I couldn't help but believe that I had finally found the man of my dreams. But, like every fairy tale, I was about to discover that not everything that glitters is gold. Life with Jake felt like a dream. In the first few months, everything was light, fun, and full of promises. But as time went on, some small cracks began to form in the perfect image I had built of him. It was a subtle slipping of details that didn't quite fit, but I chose to ignore it, convinced that it was just part of his artistic and eccentric way. On that sunny morning, I was organizing my photos from the last exhibition when my phone buzzed. It was a message from Jake. "Hey, love. Don't forget we have that event at Alex's gallery today. I can't wait to see you." I smiled at the screen, but at the same time, a pang of suspicion pierced through me. He was talking about Alex, a friend I had never met. I frowned, trying to remember if he had mentioned that name before. Oh, it must just be a new friend, I thought, trying to convince myself. After all, Jake had this way of connecting with many people, and I should trust him. Even so, I decided to ask, "Hey, who's Alex?" "You've never mentioned him before," I replied, keeping my tone light but a little inquisitive. The response came quickly. "Oh, an amazing artist. You're going to love him. He's pretty different, you know. I met him at a gallery in New York. Don't worry, you'll feel at home there." "All right, I'm counting down the minutes," I wrote, but the feeling that something was off wouldn't leave me. The event at the gallery wasn't the first time I had noticed inconsistencies in Jake's stories. He often mentioned friends or events I had never heard about. It was as if he lived in parallel worlds, and for some reason, I didn't belong to one of them. When I arrived at the gallery, the place was packed with people. The smell of fresh paint and red wine lingered in the air, and laughter echoed all around. Jake was there, in the midst of a group of artists, gesturing animatedly. He turned and saw me, his smile lighting up the room. "Clara, you made it. Look, here are some of my friends," he said, pulling me close. But instead of introducing me, he started talking about a piece that was on display. I smiled, but Jake's gaze kept drifting, as if he was more interested in something happening around me. "Hi, I'm Clara. Nice to meet you all," I said, trying to join the conversation. But as the minutes passed, I realized I didn't know anyone. They talked about past experiences and travels, and I felt like an intruder. "You remember the trip to Paris, right, Jake?" said a casually dressed woman. "Of course. It was an incredible experience," he replied, but the expression on his face wasn't the same as usual. There was a subtle tension, as if he was hiding something. "Paris? You never told me about that," I murmured, pulling Jake aside to a quieter corner. "When was that trip? I'd like to know more." "Oh, it was a while ago. An art project I worked on. You know how I am, always on the go," he replied, with a smile that didn't seem very convincing. "Yeah, but you know I love hearing your stories," I insisted, trying to keep the conversation light, but doubt settled in my chest. "Sorry, love. Sometimes I get lost in my memories." "Let's enjoy the party," he said, pulling me back into the group, but the feeling that something was wrong wouldn't leave me. The next day, I met Lucas, my longtime friend, for coffee. He had always been someone I admired for his honesty and the way he saw the world. When I arrived at the cafe, he had a serious expression, which made me uneasy. "Clara, can I talk to you about something?" he began, looking around as if he wanted to make sure we were alone. "Of course, Lucas. What's going on?" He hesitated for a moment, as if choosing his words. "I don't want you to get mad, but I don't really trust Jake." His words cut like a knife. "What do you mean?" "He's amazing. You don't know him like I do. He's wonderful. I know you're in love, but haven't you noticed the strange things he says? Sometimes it seems like he's hiding something." "I don't know. Just be careful," Lucas said, his voice worried. "I trust him. He's just a little different. You know, an artist. They're like that, full of mysteries," I replied, trying to convince myself while also pushing away the doubts that began to sprout in my mind. Lucas sighed, but didn't press further. "I'm just saying this because I care about you, Clara. I don't want you to get hurt." "Thanks, Lucas. But I know what I'm doing," I said, but I felt like I was just trying to protect myself from myself. That afternoon was marked by an unease that wouldn't leave me. I didn't want to believe that Jake could be deceiving me. After all, he always promised to be honest. I was determined to ignore the doubts and believe in the love I felt for him. In the following days, Jake surprised me with a proposal that excited me. "Clara, how about we go to the spring art festival? It's going to be amazing. We can explore new exhibits and meet new artists together," he suggested, looking into my eyes with that charm that always left me speechless. "Yes, I'd love to," I exclaimed, barely containing my excitement. I had always dreamed of going to a festival like that, and the idea of sharing that experience with Jake made me radiant. But as he talked about the trip, I noticed a slight nervousness in his voice. He was fidgeting, as if he were hiding something. "Are you okay, Jake? You seem a little anxious," I asked, trying to find out what could be bothering him. "Oh, I'm just thinking about the preparations. I don't want anything to go wrong." "It's going to be perfect," he replied quickly, but the sparkle in his eyes didn't seem very certain. "Of course, everything will be fine. I trust you," I said, trying to encourage him. But inside, the unease grew. What could be worrying him? As the festival approached, doubt began to root itself in my heart. I wanted to believe that everything was fine, but Lucas's words and my own intuitions began to whisper. What could Jake be hiding? What if he wasn't who he said he was? The anticipation of the trip mixed with a growing fear, and I could only hope that when we got there, everything would become clear. The art festival was a true spectacle. The lights sparkled at every corner, the captivating music echoed through the air, and the aroma of street food filled the atmosphere with promises of unforgettable flavors. I was excited, feeling that this would be a magical moment for Jake and me. However, as we walked together among the colorful exhibits, a strange feeling began to settle in my chest. Jake seemed distant. He had a smile that lit up the room, but there was something in his gaze that didn't connect with me. Every time I tried to start a conversation, he responded in a monosyllabic tone, as if his mind were far away, in a place I couldn't reach. I forced myself to believe it was just the intensity of the festival that had him like this. Artists are intense, Clara, I thought, trying to justify his change in behavior. After a few hours, I decided it was time to check out the works of other artists. Jake, how about we look at those sculptures over there? I suggested, pointing to an installation that had captured my attention. He nodded, but didn't seem genuinely interested. What should have been a fun and light moment quickly turned into a whirlwind of doubts. That was when I saw him. Jake stepped away from me with a furtive look and began typing quickly on his phone. My heart raced. This wasn't how he usually behaved. Of course, I had no right to question him about his messages, but the unease began to consume me. The curiosity, mixed with a hint of distrust, led me to step back a bit, pretending to look at a nearby painting. Who could he be trying to contact? I thought, biting my lower lip. The idea that he might be communicating with someone else, especially in such a romantic place, chilled me. My instinct told me to approach him, but the fear of discovering something I didn't want to know paralyzed me. The festival continued to pass in a blur of colors and sounds, but I couldn't focus on anything. Jake returned to me, but there was a tension in the air, a sort of invisible wall that had risen between us. I tried to keep the conversation light, talking about one of the pieces I had seen. Did you see that metal sculpture? It's impressive, isn't it? I asked, trying to bring some enthusiasm to our dialogue. Yeah, pretty cool, he replied, but his voice was distant, as if he were thinking about something else. That night, on the way back to the hotel, the doubts became unbearable. Maybe I'm imagining things, I told myself. Jake would never do something like that. But a small part of me couldn't silence the unease that was starting to turn into a frenzy of questions. I needed to understand what was happening. The next morning, as the city was still waking up, I made a decision. I needed to investigate. Instead of letting insecurity take over, I would seek the truth. My instinct told me that something was very wrong, and I couldn't ignore it. I was no longer the naive Clara who fell for the promises of love. Now I wanted answers. As soon as Jake left for breakfast, I grabbed my phone and started searching for some information about him. What did I hope to find? I wasn't sure, but curiosity guided me. I didn't know where this would lead me, but I had to try. I began Googling his name and any information that might come up. My heart raced with every search, and anxiety left me restless. Then I found something, a small mention in an art blog. It said there were rumors of fraud surrounding some of his works. My heart sank. Those mysterious messages I had seen the night before began to make sense. Jake couldn't possibly be involved in something so dirty, could he? He was so charming, so passionate about art. What was behind that facade? Desperate, I decided to talk to Lucas, my longtime friend. Lucas, can you meet me? I texted, still trembling at the thought that Jake might be involved in something so wrong. He replied quickly, agreeing to meet me at a nearby cafe. When I arrived at the cafe, the aroma of fresh coffee couldn't calm my nerves. Lucas was sitting at a table in the corner, and his face lit up when he saw me, but quickly turned to worry as he noticed my expression. Clara, what happened? You look pale, he said, pulling a chair for me. I'm worried about Jake. I began, hesitating. I saw him receiving strange messages at the festival, and then I found some things about him online. It seems he might be involved in art fraud. Lucas frowned, his expression becoming more serious. Fraud? Clara, that's serious. Are you sure about what you're saying? I'm not sure of anything, but I need to know. I can't just ignore this. I replied, my voice trembling. I feel so lost. He has always been so charming and passionate about art. How could he get involved in something so low? Lucas sighed, looking down for a moment. You know that sometimes people aren't who they seem to be, right? I just hope you're not hurting yourself. I know, but I can't let this go. I need to find out the truth, I declared, determined. And at that moment, I realized I was about to embark on a path that could change everything. All I wanted was for this not to be true, but my instinct warned me that I was about to discover something that could shatter my view of Jake. I returned to the hotel, determined to find out what else I could uncover. With every passing moment, the idea that everything I had believed could be a lie became more real and painful. And I was about to plunge into a world of distrust that I never imagined I would be a part of. The love I felt for Jake was about to be tested in ways I could never have predicted. The sunlight streamed through the window, illuminating the messy room I was in. My heart still raced, and my head was filled with questions that wouldn't stop swirling. What would I do now? Confronting Jake was a necessity I couldn't ignore, but what if he managed to convince me again? I had fallen into that trap once before, and now, the pain of betrayal weighed on my chest like an unbearable burden. I got up and dressed, trying to organize my thoughts. I looked at myself in the mirror and saw a confused but determined woman. The image reflected someone who needed answers, and I wouldn't rest until I found them. I needed to confront him. It was time to know the truth, no matter how painful it might be. With my mind focused, I grabbed my phone and sent Jake a message suggesting we meet at the cafe where it all began. The place was filled with memories, but I didn't want that to stop me from moving forward. He replied quickly, agreeing to the meeting, and with that, a chill ran down my spine. How would he react to my questioning? What would I say? The anxiety was palpable, but the need for answers outweighed everything else. I arrived at the cafe and sat at a table in the corner, observing the people around me. The aroma of fresh coffee and the whispers of animated conversations contrasted with the whirlwind of emotions I was feeling. I looked at the clock, and within a few minutes, Jake walked in, wearing that smile that always made me dizzy. He looked so carefree, as if nothing was happening. Hi, Clara. He approached, leaning in to give me a kiss on the cheek. Good to see you. Hi, Jake, I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. We need to talk. He sat down across from me, and his curious gaze made me feel a wave of anger and sadness. I took a deep breath, trying to find the right words. I saw some things I can't ignore. Jake furrowed his brow, his smile fading. What do you mean by that? I know about the frauds, Jake, I said, my voice tense. About what you're doing with the art. I saw the messages, and I can't understand why you would lie to me. He leaned back in his chair, still looking calm, but his eyes showed a flicker of concern. Clara, you don't understand. I did all of this to protect you and us. The art world is complicated, and I just wanted you to stay out of it. Protect. The word came out like a choked scream. You betrayed me. How is that protection? You left me in a sea of lies. I don't know if I can trust you again. Jake leaned forward, his expression shifting from carefree to intense. Please listen. I made wrong choices, but everything was out of love. I wanted you to have a better life. I didn't want you to see the dark side of this world. And what do you think I'm seeing now? I asked, my voice trembling. Can't you understand how much this hurts me? I loved you, Jake. I believed in you." He sighed, running his hands through his hair, a nervous gesture I was all too familiar with. "Clara, I lost my way. I'm not a perfect person, but you need to understand that everything I did was for us. I promise to be honest, and I will be. Trust me. If I could turn back time, I would." There was a sincerity in his voice that made me hesitate. He was always so charming, and there were moments when I believed he was really trying to change. However, the evidence was clear. "What if I can't trust you again? What will you do then?" "Give me a chance," he pleaded, his eyes searching mine. "I will do whatever it takes to prove that I'm committed. Don't let me go, Clara. I can't imagine my life without you." His words resonated within me, and confusion settled in again. I wanted to believe, but the pain of betrayal still throbbed strongly. What if you lie again? What if I discover more things that hurt me? "I won't lie. I promise. The necklace you have, it's a symbol of our protection. I want you to believe in me. You're the only person who really matters to me." The necklace. I touched it, feeling the cold metal against my skin. It was as if it were telling me that everything I had believed was right there, but the reality was much more complex. The scale of love and betrayal was tipping toward distrust. "I need to think," I murmured, my voice barely a whisper. "This is all so confusing." Jake nodded, but his gaze was filled with desperation. "Please don't leave me. I will show you that I can change, that I can be the man you deserve." As he spoke, a part of me wanted to believe, but there was another part screaming for me to walk away. What he was asking for was a concession I didn't know if I could give. "I'm going to need time," I finally said, getting up. "I can't do this right now." He didn't try to hold me back, but his look spoke more than words could express. It was a silent plea for me not to leave him, but I needed space. I needed to understand what was happening and, most importantly, understand myself. I left the cafe with a heavy heart, feeling that the knot in my throat wouldn't disappear anytime soon. The street was full of life, but I was lost in my thoughts. Confusion and pain followed me like shadows, and I didn't know how to shake them off. In the days that followed, a cloud of distrust hung over me. I tried to deceive myself by believing Jake's promises, but there was something inside me I couldn't ignore. His words still echoed in my mind, and the need to uncover the truth became more urgent. I decided to investigate more actively. Talking to people who knew Jake might be the key to understanding who he really was. What could I discover? What else might he have hidden? The idea of seeking information gave me a new purpose, and I knew I couldn't hesitate. Talking to Lucas, my longtime friend, was the first step. He had always expressed concern about my relationship, and now I needed his perspective. "Lucas, you're still worried about Jake, right?" I asked as we met at a bar. "Worried? Clara, I'm alarmed." "What's going on? You seem different," he said, looking me in the eyes. I discovered some things that have left me with doubts about him," I confessed, feeling the weight of my words. "He has a past, Lucas. I need to know the truth. You need to protect yourself, Clara. I can't just sit here while you dive headfirst into a relationship that could be dangerous," he replied, his voice firm. "I know, but I'm so confused. What if I'm wrong? What if everything he said is true?" Lucas shook his head. "If you feel you need to investigate, then do it. I can't guarantee you'll like what you find." His response gave me courage. I needed to know what was hidden behind Jake's charming smile. The truth, no matter how painful, was what I truly desired. In the following days, I began to do small investigations, discreetly talking to a few people Jake knew. What I found was a tangled web of information, some alarming and others that simply didn't fit. And so, with each new conversation, the truth became even more elusive. I needed more. And what I would discover next would change everything. I clearly remember the night I decided it was time to take action. The pain and betrayal I had felt left me in a constant state of alert, as if the world around me was in slow motion. Moonlight filtered through the curtains of my room, casting dancing shadows on the walls. I sat on the bed, my phone in hand, staring at the screen, hesitating. Lucas had helped me gather all the evidence that Jake was not who he claimed to be, and now it was time to expose the truth. Clara, you need to protect yourself. He won't stop on his own, Lucas had told me, his serious tone making me feel the weight of the situation. I knew he was right, but the love I felt for Jake still held me in a way I couldn't fully understand. The promises he made, the moments we shared, it all felt so real. But the reality now was that I was dealing with a liar. I met Lucas at a small, cozy cafe in the downtown area. He was sitting at a table near the window, nervously stirring a cup of coffee. As soon as I walked in, he looked up, and his eyes lit up when he saw me. "Hey, Clara. How are you feeling?" he asked, his voice heavy with concern. "More determined than ever," I replied, sitting down across from him. "I can't be a victim anymore. I need to do something." Lucas nodded, and I could see the admiration in his gaze. "Great. Then let's review what we have. Jake's victims need to know the truth. We need to compile everything we've found and, if necessary, contact the police." The hardest part was recalling everything Jake had done and how he had manipulated not just me, but so many others. As we talked, I remembered every detail of our interactions. The romantic dinners, the whispered promises by candlelight, all of it now had a bitter taste. "Did you remember to talk to the woman he deceived in Miami?" Lucas asked as he started listing the victims we had managed to contact. "Is she willing to talk?" "Yes," I replied. "She texted me yesterday. She said she's willing to meet. She also has evidence. We can use that to our advantage." "Perfect. Let's meet her tomorrow. And after that, we'll compile everything and bring it to the authorities," Lucas said, his determination inspiring me. The night passed, and the sense of relief I had hoped for didn't come. Instead, a growing anxiety took hold of me. What if Jake found out what I was doing? What if he tried to manipulate me again? I didn't know what to expect, but I knew I had to stay strong. The next day, I met with the woman Jake had deceived. Her name was Sophia, and unlike me, she hadn't hesitated to confront him. Sophia was a strong woman, her voice firm as she spoke about how Jake had ruined her life. "He promised me the world, and in the end, all he left me with was debt," she said, her gaze hardened. "I trusted him, just like you did. He's a true master of manipulation." "I believed in him too," I replied, my voice sounding weaker than I would have liked. "But now we need to act. Let's expose him." Sophia nodded, and together we decided it was time to gather all the possible evidence. We spent the next few hours compiling documents, text messages, photos, and testimonies. It was astonishing to see how much pain and deception Jake had caused, and my anger grew with each new discovery. "Clara, are you ready for this?" Lucas asked as we left the cafe, our hands full of papers and recordings. "After everything you've been through, are you sure you want to go ahead?" "Yes," I replied firmly. "I can't let him keep doing this to other people. I can't be the victim anymore." However, on my way home, I couldn't help but let doubt creep in again. The image of Jake, his warm smile and sweet words, flooded my mind. What would he say if he knew I was about to expose him? As I looked out the window, I saw the city lights flickering and thought about how love can be treacherous. That night, Jake called me. The call came as a surprise, and my heart raced in my chest. I hesitated before answering, but curiosity won out. "Hey, Clara," he said, his voice smooth and seductive. "I've been thinking about you." "Hey, Jake," I replied, trying to keep my calm. What do you want? I miss you. Can we meet? I'd like to talk about us, he said, and I could feel the manipulation in his words. I miss you too. I lied, trying to hide the truth. But I'm busy right now. Please don't avoid me. I promise I'll explain everything. I just need a chance to make things right, he insisted. I felt torn between the desire to believe him and the need to find out more. Okay, Jake. We can meet, but only to talk, I said, determined to use this opportunity to gather more information. He suggested a small bar where we used to go. At 8 p.m., I'll be there, he said, his voice full of hope. When I hung up, a wave of emotions washed over me. I knew I was playing a dangerous game, but I needed to know what he had to say. The truth was, I still felt something for him, and it tormented me. I arrived at the bar early, my heart racing. The ambience was warm and intimate, but the heat of the place couldn't dissipate the tension I felt. When Jake walked in, his eyes sparkled upon seeing me. He approached, his charming smile almost making me forget why I was there. Clara, you look beautiful, he said, pulling out a chair to sit down. I really am sorry for everything. Jake, we need to talk about some things. I began, sitting up straight in my chair. He looked at me, his eyes narrowing in doubt. Sure, whatever you want. I've heard some things, and I want to know the truth about you, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. Jake hesitated, but quickly recovered. What did you hear? Don't believe everything they say. I heard that you have a complicated past, I continued, determined not to let him manipulate the situation. About frauds and lies. Clara, that's not true. I did some things I regret, but that was in the past. I've changed. I love you and want a future with you, he said, his voice filled with emotion. I need more than words, Jake. I need the truth, I replied, trying to control the anger rising within me. And then, as he spoke, I discreetly turned on my phone and started recording. The adrenaline coursed through my veins. Every word he said was like a knife, cutting deeper into the truth I already knew. I felt a mix of relief and anger. Finally, I was getting the evidence I needed. I never wanted to hurt you, Clara. You're the only one that matters to me, Jake continued, his voice now almost pleading. I want to believe you, but I can't, I said, feeling tears in my eyes. I need you to tell me the truth. You're involved in fraud, aren't you? He hesitated, and for a moment, I could see the mask of confidence he wore begin to crack. Clara, please. I'm doing this to protect us, he said, but the sincerity was no longer visible in his voice. You're only protecting yourself, Jake. I can't be a victim anymore, I replied, determination taking hold of me. As he tried to explain himself, I knew the moment to act was approaching. I had the recordings, and now I had to decide what to do with them. Fear was still present, but a new strength was also emerging, reminding me that I was no longer alone. I had Lucas and Sophia by my side, and together, we were stronger than Jake could ever imagine. My heart raced as I walked toward the police station. The folder in my hands felt like it weighed tons, each document inside representing a part of the betrayal Jake had imposed on me. The city lights flickered around me, but the only light I could see was the hope that, finally, I was taking a step that would change my life. The distrust that consumed me had transformed into determination. I no longer wanted to be a victim. When I entered the police station, the smell of old coffee and yellowed paper invaded my nose. There was movement around me, police officers chatting, people waiting. I approached the counter, where a policewoman, with a tired look, attended to me. Good afternoon, how can I help? She asked, not looking at me. I have information about an art fraud scheme. It's urgent, I replied, my voice trembling. She finally raised her eyes, assessing me. There was something in her gaze that gave me courage. You can come in. We'll talk in the interrogation room. The walk to the room felt like an eternity. Each step was an internal battle between fear and determination. When the door closed behind me, I took a deep breath, trying to calm the whirlwind of emotions. So, what do you have? The policewoman asked, sitting down at the table. My hands trembled as I opened the folder and began to lay everything out. The recorded conversations, the exchanged emails, the stories Jake had told that were now revealed as lies. The policewoman listened attentively, taking notes and looking up every now and then, as if each word was a piece of the puzzle she was trying to assemble. Are you sure you want to go through with this? She asked, her eyes fixed on me. Yes. I can't live with this anymore. He needs to be held accountable, I replied, feeling the strength of my words. When I finished, the policewoman informed me that they would investigate. I couldn't believe I was one step away from seeing Jake pay for his lies. But there was a part of me that still hesitated. What if this only made things worse? What if he tried to manipulate me again? That's when I decided to confront him one last time. I went to the cafe where we used to meet, a place where our laughter echoed, now haunted by memories. My hand was sweating as I held my phone, waiting for him to respond to my message. Can we meet? We need to talk. The response came quickly. Sure. See you in an hour. When Jake arrived, he wore that charming smile that always caught me off guard. But today, I was not the same naive Clara he once knew. I was a woman determined to seek justice. Clara, he exclaimed, pulling me into a hug that I didn't reciprocate. It's great to see you. You look so beautiful. Thanks, Jake. Can we sit and talk? He nodded, but his gaze shifted as if he already felt the weight of the conversation to come. We sat at a table in the corner, away from the curious stares of other customers. I've been thinking a lot about us. He began, but I interrupted him. Before you continue, Jake, I need you to listen to me. I know about your fraud. He hesitated, his eyes widening for a moment, but soon regained his composure. Clara, you don't understand. I did it for us. I just wanted a better future for both of us, he said, his voice full of emotion. A future built on lies? I replied, anger spilling over. I trusted you, Jake. That necklace you gave me, what does it mean now? He leaned back in his chair, looking flustered. I didn't want you to know. I thought I could pay off the debts and then everything would go back to normal. I love you, Clara. Love. I laughed, but it wasn't a happy laugh. You don't know what love is. Love is honesty, it's respect. You deceived me and destroyed everything we built. Jake leaned forward, his expression shifting from desperation to an attempt at control, as if he wanted to pull me back into his web of lies. You don't need to go to the police. We can solve this together. I can change, I promise, he said, his voice almost pleading. No. My voice was firm. I'm no longer a pawn in your game. I'm going to the police, and you're going to pay for everything you've done. His eyes narrowed, and for a moment, I saw a flash of anger. You're going to regret this, Clara. No one will believe you. I'm a respected artist, and you're just a dreamy photographer. Those words cut like knives. But instead of crumbling, I felt a wave of determination. And what if I get the evidence? What will you do then? He hesitated, and the silence that followed was heavy. You don't have evidence, he said, but his voice was weaker. I do. And I'm going to use it, I declared, standing up. I hope you're ready for the consequences. I left the cafe feeling that, at last, I was in control of my life. When I arrived at the police station again, the policewoman was waiting for me. You came back, she said, with an encouraging smile. Yes. I want to move forward with what we discussed. From that moment on, action took over. They summoned Jake for questioning, and I watched him being arrested on the spot, The look of disbelief on his face was an image I would forever keep in my memory. I couldn't believe I had finally succeeded. The feeling of liberation was overwhelming. After everything, I sat in a nearby park, watching the leaves fall from the trees, the cool breeze touching my face. Life was changing, and I was ready to start anew. The tears that once fell from sadness were now tears of relief. The following days were about adaptation. With the support of Lucas and some friends, I began to plan my new life. The idea of traveling to a new city began to take shape. I wanted to rediscover my passion for photography, away from the shadows Jake had cast over me. When I finally decided where to go, the feeling of freedom was indescribable. I arrived in a small coastal town, where the sunlight reflected off the waves, creating a spectacle of colors that reminded me why I loved capturing moments. I allowed myself to be happy again. With every click of my camera, I felt like I was rising again, leaving behind the shackles of the past. At an art event in the town, I met someone who changed my destiny once more. His name was Raphael, a lively artist full of stories. We talked for hours, laughing and sharing our dreams. He looked into my eyes and said, "Life is a blank canvas, Clara, and you can paint it any way you want." Those words resonated within me. Finally, I was ready to believe in love again, but this time with the certainty that I deserved someone who valued honesty and sincerity. The story I thought would end in pain was now just the beginning of a new chapter. Smiling, I looked to the future, ready for whatever came next.